more than anything today, we need refuat nefesh. We need the healing of the soul, not necessarily just the healing of the body. Because someone can have a body that's 100%, but if their neshama is Tisha B'Av, and they're far from Hashem, you have yourself a problem. And that's actually one of the biggest things, before we get into the Shiur, the ParaShat itself, we'll talk about it also. People have an understanding that, a misunderstanding, that when someone is is in a depression, then it's okay for them to, in essence, they're almost considered like a sickly person, and it's okay for them to not do Ritzon Hashem, not necessarily get closer to Hashem, but there's nothing further from the truth. I had this situation a few times over the last couple of weeks. People ask me about depression, because depression is something, unfortunately, in the material world, we suffer a lot from. Sometimes you see that the more material someone has, the more money they have, the more likely they are to become depressed. I always mention the same example, which is the most recent example of Robin Williams. He died, he had more material than most people even know what to do with, but unfortunately committed suicide. So, depression is a spiritual feeling. It's something emotional, but emotions are spiritual, which means that when someone has any type of depression, that means that their neshama is suffering. Their neshama is suffering, like something is missing. It's not because you didn't get the job. It's not because your girlfriend dumped you. It's not because you can't find a boyfriend. It's not because your kids are failing in school. That's not the real reason. Depression comes because your neshama is suffering, because something is missing. All the money in the world is not going to heal it. All the boyfriends and girlfriends in the world are not going to heal it. The only thing that's going to heal it permanently is if you give the neshama its food. And its food has to be something spiritual. It has to be something that is that's holy, not something material. Material may, plug the hole momentarily, but it's like a seltzer pill. You ever see seltzer, the commercial for seltzer? You see it in a cup, you throw it in the cup, and then it disintegrates after a few seconds. Same thing. When you put money, you give somebody wins the lotto. Okay, so they were depressed before they won the lotto. Now they have the lotto, so they're going to start spending money left and right. But eventually, after a few months, a year, whatever it is, the feeling they had before returns with a vengeance. It's even worse than it was before. Because now, the hope of once I get rich, I'm going to be happy,
is not there anymore.
Because they don't have the hope anymore. So, when someone has any form of depression, and I can tell you from personal experience, I suffered from depression for many, many years. From the years I was a teenager all the way to, when I was much older. And until I did tshuva, I had no concept of what to heal it. One of the ways that I would try to plug the hole was to work a lot, so I keep myself busy. But once in a while it didn't work. So I'm very familiar with the whole issue. I studied it psychologically and in a lot of other ways, and I can guarantee you that from experience, not just from learning Torah, but from experience, the only thing that works is a spiritual solution. So when someone says, listen, because I'm depressed, maybe it's okay for me to pass on a few mitzvot, it's the exact opposite. When you're depressed, you should do you should actually add mitzvot. You should do more. Why? Because your neshama is yearning for it. It needs the food that's missing for a long time. You starved it for a week, for a month, for 2 months, for a year, 5 years, 10 years. Now it got to a point where it's struggling to even survive. So now is the time to add mitzvot, to add kedusha, to add Torah, to do even more, even though it's difficult in the end because you have a lot of tum'ah around you from all of the sins that you're making, and also it's very difficult to connect to Hashem when you're in depression. Hashem immediately distances himself, in essence, in a spiritual way, from people that are sad. One proof of that we have from Yaakov Avinu. Even though Hashem is always among us, when Yaakov Avinu found out that his son Yosef was killed, immediately his name was changed from Israel, which meant that he had prophecy, to Yaakov. And then you see the 22 years later, when he finds out that Yosef is alive, the very same verse calls him Yaakov, and as soon as he finds out, it calls him Israel. He comes back to being Israel. So that means for over 20 years, Yaakov did not have prophecy. He did not have nevuah. Why? Hashem distances himself from someone that's sad. Why is Hashem distant? Don't we need him even more? Don't I need Hashem even more when I'm depressed?
Trust. I need.
The key here is that Hashem is telling you you're only depressed because you have no emunah. That's your problem. You don't believe in me. Okay, you don't believe in me. Go ahead, try to figure it out on your own. When you have emunah, then I'll come back. Why does it say that someone's depressed, have no emunah, or someone that's angry also has no emunah? Someone that has any negative feelings, it's always because of lack of emunah. Why is it lack of emunah? Because in essence, what Hashem is telling you here is that I created the heaven and the earth and everything in between. I'm in control of everything. You're in control of nothing. The only thing you're in control of is whether you're going to be righteous or wicked. So when something happens, it's because I signed off on it and I made it happen. And if you got mad, or you got upset, or you got depressed, then what are you really saying? What you're really saying here is that maybe Hashem made a mistake. The tachlis is, the bottom line is that when we're upset, we're saying, we don't deserve it. We don't deserve what Hashem gave us. I got a flat tire, I lost some money, this thing, that thing, all these things happened. Why are all of these things happening to me? Why is Hashem doing? Because, okay, let's say you believe in God. You say, maybe Hashem did this to me, but why? So you're questioning Hashem. In essence, what you're saying is maybe Hashem made a mistake. Maybe he's so busy with everything else. Chas v'shalom, maybe he's too busy and he made a mistake with me. Like Job thought maybe Hashem made a mistake, and he said maybe he thinks that Eyov, which is the Hebrew way of saying Job, is Oyev. Because you spell the words with the same letters. Eyov means Job. Oyev means enemy. So Job said maybe Hashem is giving me all this suffering because he made a mistake and he thinks that Job is really enemy. So when Hashem answered him, Hashem told him, I know the names, I even know the names of each one of the hairs on your head. Each one of your hairs has a name. You don't know the names. Hashem knows the names of each one of the hairs on your head. And I make sure that each one of them gets the parnasah that it deserves. What's the parnasah of the hair? Sweat. Sweat is what makes you grow hair. That's the food for the hair. Mm-hmm. So I make sure that each hair gets the parnasah. Why is it so important that each hair gets the parnasah? Because if two hairs come out of the same hole, immediately the person goes blind. Immediately the person goes blind. So I have to make sure that no two hairs are sharing parnasah. And I even know the names. So you think if I know the names of even your hairs, I created the heaven and the earth and everything in between, I made a mistake on your name? Instead of Eyov, it's Oyev? You think that just because you don't understand why I gave you a flat tire and you missed a meeting, why the customer fired you, why this one hates you, why this one wrote a blog about you and tells you all these bad things, why this, why that, why the kids are failing in school. You think I made a mistake? And that's why you're depressed? That's why you're angry? Maybe you should look differently. Maybe you should look in the mirror and say, wait a minute. Since I'm not Moshe Rabbeinu, Hashem's not going to talk to me out of a bush. So what is he talking to me to? He's talking me through the events around my life. Things that are happening around me. When things are happening around me, if I pay attention to them, that means Hashem is telling me something. Something, parnasah is not coming as easily as it did last month or even yesterday. Hashem is telling me, maybe I'm not happy with the way you spent that money. Maybe instead of giving maaser, you got an extra vacation instead. Maybe instead of giving that poor man stakal $500 because you had it at that point, you gave him only $50. And the $450 you put in a savings account just for a rainy day, like as if I don't have a rainy day for you already planned. Mm-hmm. So I gave you the money. You didn't use it the right way. I'm not going to give you the money anymore. What's the point of me giving you the money? I'm giving you all this money so you can use the money to help my people. You're not going to use it for them. I'm not going to give it to you. Simple as it gets.
So people with emunah, they shouldn't plan for retirement in a way?
Someone with 100% emunah, like 100% emunah, does not plan for retirement.
No. Doesn't plan for retirement?
No. Technically, somebody with 100%